The enigma of the 13th floor. Shadows seen in the hotel suite that never opens. A hush lay over the Grand Arcadia Hotel late in the evening when the bustling lobby, with its marble floors and crystal chandeliers, finally quieted to a soft hum of conversation. Night staff took their positions behind polished desks, and the last stragglers of weary travelers trudged off to find their rooms. A sense of timeless grandeur pervaded the place, an opulent building that blended Art Deco facades with modern amenities. For decades, the Grand Arcadia had been known as a top destination for visiting dignitaries, celebrities, and wealthy tourists. Yet, behind its glamorous reputation, old rumors circulated among staff about a strange phenomenon that plagued a hidden portion of the hotel. As with many tall buildings, the Grand Arcadia had no publicly labeled 13th floor. The elevator panel jumped from 12 to 14, following the long-standing superstition. But watchers, certain employees who had worked the night shift for years, whispered of an unlabeled door that might lead to that absent story, a floor that officially did not exist. The watchers claimed that from certain vantage points or hidden corners in the back stairwells, you could see an extra landing between floors 12 and 14. That hush, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions. So each time someone tried to physically ascend to that level, they found locked doors, half-lit corridors, or a caretaker's sign reading maintenance. The watchers insisted that on the official building plans, the 13th floor was a utility space or thick structural zone. Management deflected any questions, but the watchers found it suspicious that such a large gap existed. Equally suspicious was the fact that every so often, visitors or employees reported hearing footsteps overhead, even though they were on what was labeled the top floor. Some watchers described seeing odd reflections in certain hallway mirrors at night, shadowy shapes in corners that didn't match the corridor's angles. Rumors grew of intangible watchers, drifting among overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions. One staff member told a friend that on multiple occasions, the service elevator momentarily paused at a floor that shouldn't exist, the doors partially opening onto darkness, revealing a faint corridor. But no one dared step out. Over time, watchers realized these events peaked around certain times of year or after large gatherings in the hotel's grand ballroom. Legends eventually coalesced around the concept of a 13th floor suite that never opens. Depending on who you asked, the watchers said it was either sealed behind a decorative wall panel or hidden by a cleverly rigged elevator system. Another rumor posited that the official floor numbering was correct, but a single suite on the 14th floor was effectively the real 13th suite, locked away and never used. The watchers interpret overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions. One older bellhop who worked at the hotel since the 1970s confided in hushed tones that he had once delivered a champagne tray to a quiet occupant in a suite that wasn't on the map. He recalled a door number that made no sense, 13 something. The occupant never emerged from behind a chain lock, only an arm took the tray, paying in dusty bills. The watchers find illusions, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions, and how management told him to forget it, that no such suite existed. Indeed, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions define the hush behind the scenes. Historical records from the Grand Arcadia's archives reveal that the building was erected on the site of an older hotel destroyed by fire in the early 1900s. The watchers rummaging these documents found references to extensive remodeling after the new construction overcame certain structural anomalies. Possibly the 13th floor question was born then. Overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions. Another clue was an old letter from the original architect, speaking cryptically of a design compromise forced by the city's older catacombs. That mention of catacombs is strange. This city wasn't known for subterranean crypts. The Watchers interpret overshadow illusions, unstoppable overshadow illusions as a sign that something about the building's underpinnings might be unusual. Some Watchers even suspect that the missing floor was a deliberate attempt to confine an intangible phenomenon from the older site. Of course, none of this overshadow illusions, unstoppable overshadow illusions proves anything. But rumors about the 13th floor suite that never opens continued. Over the years, guests would sometimes mention hearing faint music or hushed conversation emanating from behind certain walls on the 14th floor, or footsteps pacing overhead from the 12th. Housekeeping staff recounted that in certain corners near the emergency staircases, the temperature would drop drastically. A new employee might get spooked by overshadow illusions, overshadow illusions, while vacuuming, claiming they glimpsed movement in the corner of the hallway mirror, a shape that vanished upon turning around. The Watchers interpret overshadow illusions, overshadow illusions, attributing these glimpses to intangible Watchers from the sealed suite. Occasionally, old employees or curious guests tried to investigate. They might slip into the service stairs at odd hours, climbing from 12 to 14, feeling the hush, overshadow illusions, overshadow illusions. Yet each time, they'd find no labeled door between floors, or they'd discover a locked door with a strange, archaic padlock. Meanwhile, management consistently denied the existence of any secret suite. The Watchers found it comedic that the official stance was, the Grand Arcadia has 14 floors, there is no 13. And yet, overshadow illusions, overshadow illusions in the Watchers' repeated sightings indicated something else was there. Some Watchers believed management was actively hiding the suite because it was haunted or carried a vile secret from the old building's tragic fire. Possibly a violent event took place there. Possibly the suite hosted a long-lost occupant who never truly left. The Watchers interpret overshadow illusions, overshadow illusions, with each new rumor fueling the building's mystique. One of the creepiest anecdotes from Watchers involved a traveling businessman who woke in the middle of the night to see a silhouette in his 14th floor window's reflection. The silhouette seemed to stand behind him, as if from an adjoining space that shouldn't exist. He spun around to find no one in his room. Rattled, he tried to go back to sleep, but the intangible hush, overshadow illusions, overshadow illusions, pressed upon him. The next day, he told staff. They shrugged, offered him a free dinner, overshadow illusions, overshadow illusions, then politely asked him not to cause a scene. The Watchers interpret overshadow illusions, overshadow illusions that management wanted to keep hush. The Traveler posted about it online, calling it the 10th hour apparition, referencing the approximate time. That post ignited speculation among Watchers that some occupant roamed from the sealed 13th floor into adjacent rooms via hidden passages. The Watchers interpret overshadow illusions, overshadow illusions as a plausible scenario, given old hotels often have secret corridors for staff or for Prohibition-era smuggling. Possibly overshadow illusions, overshadow illusions. Or maybe an intangible occupant from the suite. Over the decades, the Watchers compiled enough bizarre experiences to form a pattern. After midnight, especially between 1 and 3 a.m., hallway cameras were installed, sometimes captured flickers of movement along blank walls, or the corner of the camera lens might show a figure that didn't appear in subsequent frames. In storerooms near the top floors, items occasionally relocated in the hush, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions. People claim to hear slow, methodical footsteps overhead when no occupant was above them. The watchers interpret illusions, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions. The intangible occupant rarely exhibited aggression, but certain watchers reported feeling a cold hand on their shoulders in certain corners, or hearing a soft sob echo in the hush. At last, the watchers found a clue in a dusty employee's manual from the early years of the new hotel, discovered in a library sale. Among standard instructions about cleaning schedules, it included a cryptic addendum about Suite 1313, referencing it as a private suite not to be disturbed. The manual directed staff to avoid acknowledging any presence or occupant in that area if encountered after hours. The watchers interpret illusions, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions. This confirmed the suite existed. Possibly management kept it hush, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions, to avoid spooking guests or violating some older arrangement. Some watchers guessed maybe it was used by secret societies or shady deals. Others suspected it was more than a hush arrangement. Maybe the occupant was supernatural. The watchers glean illusions, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions from partial lines. If you see the occupant, do not engage. Refrain from crossing threshold uninvited. That suggests management believed the occupant was real, not just a ghost story. Armed with this new info, watchers launched an infiltration attempt. Two watchers, both agile travelers used to exploring abandoned floors, found a suspicious corridor behind the staff lounge on 14. Late one night, they forced the lock to a door labeled linen storage. Inside, they discovered a narrow flight of steps descending half a level, contrary to standard architecture. The watchers interpret illusions, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions. At the base, a single door with the number 1313 in faint brass. Painted over, but still readable. The watchers' hearts pounded. The intangible hush, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions was thick. They tried the handle, locked. They attempted picks, only to find the mechanism refused to budge, as though rusted or sealed. Then they heard something from behind the door, a muffled sound reminiscent of wind, or maybe a voice. One watcher swore they heard faint crying. Illusions, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions. Fear overcame them. They retreated, deciding more direct attempts might be dangerous. In the days that followed, the watchers discovered management replaced the lock on the linen storage. They interpret illusions, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions as an immediate reaction, suggesting watchers triggered an alarm or a sensor. Another watchers discovered his keycard access was revoked from upper floors. The watchers concluded the hotel management was actively covering up the suite's existence. Possibly illusions, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions. One watchers even confronted a manager, only to be politely threatened with trespassing charges if they continued prying. This only heightened watchers' suspicion that the intangible occupant or some horrifying truth lay within Suite 1313. The watchers also compiled older occupant registries. In a single archived ledger from the 1920s, they found a reference to Mr. Armitage, Suite 1313, with no checkout date. Then watchers found no further mention in subsequent logs. Illusions overshadow illusions, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions. Could Mr. Armitage be an occupant who never left? Overshadow illusions, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions? Some watchers suspect that occupant died in the suite, and his restless spirit remains. Another watchers rumored that he performed an occult ritual there, seeking immortality. Illusions overshadow illusions, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions. Possibly the occupant was sealed in. Meanwhile, sightings continued. A night shift security guard recounted an incident where an elevator spontaneously moved to the 14th floor at 2 a.m. The door slid open onto a dark corridor. The guard glimpsed a silhouette at the far end, overshadow illusions, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions. A muffled sob drifted out, so faint he almost doubted his own ears. Then the elevator closed on its own, whisking him away. Illusions overshadow illusions, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions. He turned in his resignation the next morning. As watchers collated these accounts, a pattern emerged. Many illusions overshadow illusions, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions, revolve around intangible sorrow or incomplete longing. Some watchers suspect the occupant, Armitage or another name, was a doomed lover or a traumatized occupant who took their own life in the suite. The watchers interpret illusions, overshadow illusions, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions that the occupant's sorrow manifested as intangible hush, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions, saturating the entire floor. Another watcher's hypothesis is that the occupant might be physically immortal, living in the sealed suite. A comedic or bizarre theory, yes, but illusions overshadow illusions, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions might be. Some watchers recall an unverified anecdote about staff delivering trays of food to an unmarked door. Overshadow illusions, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions, each time receiving empty plates back in the morning. Possibly an indefinite occupant, but no one can confirm. The watchers find no proof. One watchers group decided to hold a seance on the 14th floor corridor near midnight, hoping to contact the occupant or glean a spiritual answer. They recited incantations from older texts, overshadow illusions, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions, set up an array of candles in a circle. Initially, nothing occurred. Then, about 30 minutes in, each candle flickered out simultaneously. Overshadow illusions, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions. A moan or sob seemed to pass through the corridor. Some watchers felt a chill grip their hearts. Illusions overshadow illusions, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions. They ended the ritual quickly. One watchers claimed in that moment to see a pale shape stepping out from behind a corner, face contorted in silent anguish, before vanishing. Illusions overshadow illusions, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions. They left convinced that the occupant's sorrow was real, not just a rumor. Increasingly, watchers realized that attempts to forcibly open Suite 1313 might be ill-advised. Rumors abounded that each attempt triggered more sightings or illusions, overshadow illusions, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions. The watchers worried that if they physically broke down the door, the occupant's intangible sorrow might spill out catastrophically. Some watchers interpret illusions, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions akin to releasing a decades-old poltergeist. Others argue it's the only way to free the occupant's trapped spirit. This debate lingers unresolved. Meanwhile, management does everything to hush overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions. The watchers see illusions, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions in the official stance that the 13th floor doesn't exist. One day, a traveler from abroad who specialized in haunted hotels arrived, ignoring management's warnings. By day, he found no sign of anything unusual. At night, he hid in a service closet on the 14th floor to remain after hours. In the hush, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions of 2M, he claims the corridor lights dimmed spontaneously. Then footsteps approached from the direction of the sealed door. Overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions. He peered out, seeing a faint figure wearing old-fashioned attire, perhaps from the 1920s. The figure paced the hallway, as if searching for something, but its mouth hung open in a silent cry. Overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions. Then it melted into the wall. The traveler, trembling, retreated without further exploration. He posted a blog detailing the encounter, calling the occupant a shadow pinned in sorrow. Overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions. That post fueled new watchers' speculation that the occupant's presence was not inherently malevolent, but deeply grieved. Overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions. As the watchers collectively compiled these events, they concluded the enigma of the 13th floor, shadows seen in the hotel suite that never opens, stood as a testament to intangible heartbreak or tragedy anchored in a sealed place. Overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions. Some watchers suspect an older tragedy, possibly the occupant lost a child or spouse in the original building's fire. Another watcher surmises the occupant might be a centuries-old spirit from older traditions preceding even the first hotel. Overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions. None can confirm, but all watchers agree the intangible hush, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions that pervades that floor is real enough to be felt. No official investigation or exorcism was ever performed. The watchers remain uncertain if the occupant is a ghost, demon, or ephemeral projection of an older sorrow. Overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions. The watchers glean that any direct confrontation might lead to intangible side effects, like the corridor filling with silent sobbing, or watchers experiencing meltdown. So the watchers mostly watch from a distance. Overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions. They catalog each new anecdote, a housekeeper glimpsing a shape in a mirror, a security guard hearing muffled crying from the walls, a nighttime engineer noticing an unexplainable power drain near that locked door. Overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions. They remain overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions that the occupant's heartbreak might never be resolved unless the suite is opened. But the watchers also fear the occupant might unleash unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions if forcibly freed. In the conclusion, watchers realize that the synergy of illusions, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions, might define this entire scenario. The occupant's intangible sorrow merges with architecture that denies the existence of a 13th floor, forging a hush, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions that stands as a barrier. Shadows seen in the suite that never opens becomes a living parable about the cost of burying tragedy behind official disclaimers. Overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions. Even if the occupant roams silently at night, we can't be sure if it's truly malevolent or simply lamenting a lost life. The watchers see overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions in that final hush, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions. They see that each attempt to break the door or reveal the occupant's name ends in partial illusions, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions. Perhaps some secrets are meant to remain hidden. Thus ends the narrative. Overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions, about a sealed suite, intangible watchers, and a hush, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions that grips a glamorous hotel by night. The watchers pass on the caution. If you ever find yourself in a tall building with no labeled 13th floor, pay attention to the hush, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions in the corridors. You might catch a fleeting glimpse of a sorrowful occupant pacing behind locked doors, mouth open in a silent cry. Should you see it, do not linger, for overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions might entangle your soul in that intangible heartbreak. Such is the enigma of the 13th floor, shadows seen in the hotel suite that never opens, a quiet terror, overshadow illusions, unstoppable illusions, overshadow illusions that persists in the hush of late night hallways, waiting for the next unsuspecting guest.